In 1944, in the midst of World War II, Congress was already anticipating the needs of returning veterans when they issued the Servicemen's Readjustment Act. Chapter 5 of the bill provided guarantees on home loans issued to veterans. Enter William Levitt and Levitt and Sons Building Company. While serving as a Navy Seabee, he anticipated that there would be a major shift in demand for affordable housing after the war ended, and he intended to be at the forefront of filling that demand. Levitt and Sons was founded in 1929 by real estate lawyer and father Abraham Levitt with his sons Alfred and William. Right away, the men began building luxury style homes in the suburbs. Newspaper articles from the 1930s advertised the Levitt's luxury homes. It was during World War II, however, that the foundations for what would become the Levittown were laid when the federal government contracted with the Levitt and Company to build 2,000 naval base homes in Norfolk, Virginia. At this juncture, William understood that the basic components of housing construction needed to change in order to meet the demand. When William was released from active duty in 1945, the plans for the very first Levittown were underway. By 1947, the men bought the land and laid the plans for a 2,000 family community in Long Island that they planned to call Levittown. Their primary customer? Veterans, utilizing the new VA loan program. The homes were modestly priced either rent or rent to own, with a $60 monthly rent and a $6,990 purchase option. Each of their homes was sold before they even began to build. In a 1947 New York Times article, William boasted that the company was building 12 houses a day, but had set a production goal of 30 homes per day, a goal he and his company would not only meet, but exceed. The community eventually included over 17,000 homes. The company held multiple mass sales for veterans and their families, with the last and largest occurring on August 16, 1949, when 650 veterans signed contracts to purchase new construction homes to be ready in less than 4 months. In this one sale alone, he sold nearly $5.25 million worth of homes. The initial Levittown, begun in 1947, was so successful that more Levittowns were built in Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. What allowed Levitt and Sons to thrive in the post-war boom? First, they revolutionized the creation of the modern suburb. Essentially, they took the Ford assembly line and adjusted it for home construction. To reduce the cost of their home, they removed some features like garages and basements. Wood was pre-cut and walls were prefabricated and brought to the sites. There were typically only 2 to 3 designs that a homeowner could choose from, and the builders were specialized in their jobs, doing the same job with each build. Levitt also used non-unionized contractors to build his homes, thus reducing his labor costs. By reducing the cost and increasing the speed of his builds, he was able to offer well-built homes to the middle class at a price unheard of. In a 1989 news article, Hal Lefcourt stated that he wouldn't have been able to buy a home had it not been for the Levitts. The creation of this new suburb allowed him and his new wife to move out of a one-bedroom flat in Trenton, New Jersey, and for $100 down, purchase a 2-bedroom home with a fireplace, carport, and a front lawn. Secondly, in 1949, Congress recognized the need for developing more housing for the middle and lower middle income class families who are largely priced out of the housing market. They estimated that to meet the demand for housing for this population, it would be necessary to build 1.5 million homes every single year from 1949 to 1960. They also maintained that this new housing should primarily be built by private enterprises who should be encouraged to fill the need with government assistance. It would be remiss not to mention William Levitt's lobbying for what would become the Housing Act of 1949, which revamped FHA-backed loans. And with the revamped FHA-backed loans and VA-backed loans, this provided the money needed for Levitt to continue building his housing communities at a rapid rate. Additionally, the Federal Housing Administration preferenced planned communities and worked to streamline the process for government inspections to approve mortgages for prospective homebuyers. Also, due to loosened restrictions from the FHA, insurance companies, particularly Prudential, provided a lot of the financing for these planned communities. And their most famous client was Levitt and Sons, and they financed their massive construction project in Bucks County, Pennsylvania. Prudential provided $2.5 million in mortgage loans for the Pennsylvania-based Levittown homebuyers. Without government programs and the easing lending restrictions, it's doubtful that the William Levitt and his family would have seen the prosperity that they did throughout the late 40s and the 50s. William Levitt continued the business after his brother sold out his shares in the late 50s, and Abraham took a back seat in the business and then passed away in 1962, leaving William in complete control of the company. Now, Levittowns were not without their controversy. In 1954, Congress investigated William Levitt for windfall profits of $5 million for his Long Island Levittown, investigating the possibility that he used FHA backed mortgages to inflate his construction costs. He argued differently. Additionally, there were others who despised the uniformity of the suburban communities, which prompted William to adjust his designs to include 3 additional design options for families. But the last and most damning indictment against the Levittowns was its use of restrictive covenants and policies denying non white families from purchasing homes in Levittown. William Levitt argued that he would lose to his competitors if he allowed black families into his communities, which prompted protests at his building sites in a 1949 FHA statement that they couldn't force him to open his community to African Americans. Levitt eventually relented and opened the communities to people of color in the late 50s. William Levitt became exceedingly wealthy, worth more than an estimated $100 million in the post-war years. But in 1968, he sold his company to International Telephone and Telegraph for $92 million in stock and then attempted to recreate his communities overseas, but it flopped. And when he passed away in 1994, the wealth he accrued in the 50s and 60s was all but gone. Despite the loss of wealth, his creation of the modern suburb influenced generations of builders and provided a much-needed commodity for burgeoning American middle class.